What is up, my crime lovers? My name is Connor Shinsky, and this is Crimes with Connor. But before we get started, let's hear a word from our sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. Raid Shadow Legends is one of the biggest mobile role-playing games, and it's totally free. All the champions in the game can be customized with unique gear that changes your strategic buffs and abilities. The dungeon bosses have some ridiculous skills of their own, and figuring out the perfect party and strategy to overtake them is a lot of fun. Currently, with over 300,000 reviews, Raid has almost a perfect score on the Play Store. The community is growing fast, and the highly anticipated new Faction Wars feature is now live. Go to the podcast description, click on the special links, and you'll get 50,000 silver and a free epic champion as a part of the new player program to start your journey. Good luck, and I'll see you out there. I really hope you guys check out that awesome game. And once again, welcome to my crime podcast, Crimes with Connor. Today we're going to talk about a case which was headline news in the United States, but actually took place in the center of Italy. It was the Amanda Knox case, whether you know about it or not. Today we're going to dive in, talk about what we think, and we're going to ask you guys a few questions to answer on Twitter. Okay, so think back to November of 2007. What were you doing? I wasn't doing too much. Probably taking 3 naps a day, seeing as I was about 3 years old at that time. And I didn't really know what was going on with the world. So this case didn't come up to me until one of you guys recommended it last time. The morning of November 2nd in 2007, Meredith Kircher was found murdered in her house in Perugia, Italy. Perugia, Italy is a small town, doesn't have a huge international rep. Kircher, a British national, was in Italy studying and shared her house with 3 other students. The other 2 don't have too much to play in the case, but of course the major one, Amanda Knox, was an American student. Knox at the time was working at a bar called Le Chick, and she worked late nights. She had a boyfriend who was an Italian man who comes in later. When Knox was interviewed about the murder by the police, they determined that she gave conflicting statements of her whereabouts, and she even accused her own boss at the bar, who had a solid alibi. In this case, Knox was questioned without a lawyer, which is legal in Italy, as long as Knox was considered a suspect, or indagato as they called in Italy. Knox signed a confession which she admits to being in another room of the cottage while her Lechik boss, Lumumba, killed her roommate. Which sounds a little bit crazy if you ask me. After, Knox claims that the police intimidated her into making this claim. In the Italian law, the indagato, when interrogated, must be free of all undue influence, both psychological and physical. They must be willing to provide information, or animus confidenti, and the police or prosecutor cannot use the indagato or any methods of techniques that may influence their right to self-determination or alter their memory or their capability to evaluate facts. This sounds pretty similar to the United States Constitution about how we can't, blackmail anyone into doing anything. But also, in the United States, pretty much every time someone's questioned, especially about a serious case like this, there's a lawyer. And the Italians don't provide one unless that rule is broken. Soon after, Knox was charged with murder alongside her Italian boyfriend, which we talked about earlier, Rafael Solicito, and Rudy Good, an Ivory Coast native who says that he had consensual sex with the victim the night before, and that he was in the bathroom when an unidentified man entered and killed Kircher. Good was convicted in 2008 on a fast-track trial. He chose the fast-track trial method almost like a plea deal in the United States because he thought Solicito and Knox were going to collude against him and give him an even worse sentence. But he was actually sentenced to 30 years, which is more than, we'll find out later about the other 2. They were set to go to trial in late 2009. Later, when he was in prison, Gued stated, "Amanda and I both know the truth. I did not inflict the stab wounds." This is slightly conflicting because the police reports state that her throat was slit and there weren't really any stab wounds. Later, he also stated, "I wrote in blood on the wall and I was confused and overwhelmed by fear." This to me seems kind of crazy, and I think there should be a psychological test on Rudy Good. All these claims were a little bit too late, And although in the US we have a phrase, innocent until proven guilty, in this case it seemed like Knox and her boyfriend were guilty until proven innocent. Personally, if I was in a foreign country being prosecuted for a crime, I would be very scared myself. Knox's attorneys argued that the bra clasp that was found over a month after the murder was contaminated, and a knife blade from Solicito's house couldn't have made the wounds on the victim and was also contaminated. These are both true because the bra was photographed at the original crime scene, but the month later trace samples, which are DNA left at the scene of a crime, also called touch DNA, requires very small samples. For example, from the skin cells left on an object after it has been touched or casually handled, or from even footprints. Since the crime scene investigators had been working in the house for over a month, there would most definitely be cross-contamination of DNA all over the room. Another argument, which I personally would have highlighted, is the cottage, which is already occupied by Kircher and the two Italian women. Also, Knox was said to be in a bad neighborhood, with drug dealers lingering daily at the nearby basketball court. On December 4th, Solicito was sentenced to 25 years, and Knox was sentenced to 26, an extra 1 year for her false accusation against her ex-boss. Gued was sentenced to 30 years and had it lowered to 16 in the years after. If we took the same evidence and brought it to United States court, how would it look different? In the United States, people are always innocent until proven guilty, and in this case, most of the evidence was just their word versus my word and a bunch of conflicting witness statements. In the United States court, this would never uphold and be enough to give those two people a 25-year plus sentence, a sentence which is almost the same amount of years that they have been on this earth. The Italian and British press had it very different than the United States press. In the Italian and British press, Knox was painted as a promiscuous party girl whose MySpace nickname of Foxy Knoxy spawned countless stories of her being a party animal and a man-eater. However, in America, she was often portrayed in the media as an innocent abroad, a young woman who had been working several jobs to earn money to study in Perugia, where she had been railroaded by an overzealous prosecutor. And honestly, this was the case. This shows how it just wasn't a battle between Knox and the Italian courts, but a battle between various nations across the world. All three of the people convicted in this trial spent time in prison until Knox and Solicito appealed their convictions. At their subsequent trial, court-appointed experts testified the original DNA evidence was unreliable and did not definitively link the young American and her former boyfriend to the crime. A bare footprint set in blood was on the bottom left corner of the bath mat of a bathroom in the villa. The prosecution argued that the footprint was made by Rafael Solicito, and that it was too small to have been left by Rudy Gued. But in fact, the 4-foot region of Gued's foot is neither longer nor wider than Raphael's. So how would this work? The print was incorrectly measured. Closer inspection shows that the tip of the second toe blended with the top of the big toe during the printing. The absorbent nature of the mat may have led to natural spreading of the blood, and the print is bloody water, not pure blood. This error in measurement is crucial because the prosecution based the compatibility of Raphael's foot on the width of his big toe, which is only just one thing. You have to take more than one thing to make sure that there's no error. Raphael's big toe measured at 30 millimeters and is therefore incompatible with the measured foot on the bath mat, which when measured correctly shows a toe print of 24.8 millimeters. At trial, Solicito's forensics expert Francesco Vinci testified convincingly that the bath mat print did not match Raphael's foot. On October 3rd of 2011, a court in Perugia acquitted the two defendants of murder. The 24-year-old Knox, who has been jailed in Italy since her 2004 arrest, flew home to the U.S. the following day. What a sigh of relief for her. And while her legal problems were already resolved, the European Court of Human Rights added icing to the victory cake by ordering Italy to pay Knox more than $20,000 in damages for the harsh interrogation she endured early in the investigation, which goes back to Indagato case about was it really a fair investigation or no. She stated, "I am grateful for their wisdom in acknowledging the reality of false confessions and the need to reform police interrogation methods." This shows how, despite Italy being an amazing, powerful, and rich country, there are still issues within the government, law enforcement, and the court proceedings. Despite all the drama being resolved for the time being, in March 2013, a new twist on the case happened. Italy's highest court overturned the acquittals of Knox and Solicito and ordered that they be retried again. This was over 5.5 years after the case actually occurred. So, how are they going to bring the evidence back? That's a real question. In the end, in January 2014, the two were both reconvicted in Kircher's death, with the same exact evidence and same exact case, no new updates. Knox, who remained in America during the trial, which is actually a law in Italy that you do not have to be present during your trial, which is very different from our own in America, was sentenced to 28.5 years, much harsher than the previous sentence from the first trial, while her former boyfriend received a 25-year prison sentence once again. Lawyers for the two appealed the convictions, and both were fully exonerated in 2015, like they did the first time. Now I want to talk about a few pieces of evidence that weren't brought up in this case. In the coroner's office, there's a diagram on the website famoustrials.com that shows how the jawbone line and throat of Meredith Kircher was slashed. There's 3 big gashes from knives, but there are also isolated bruises on the jawline. This shows how there was a little bit of a struggle before the stabbing, because how would those bruises get on both sides of the jaw and trauma on the ear? This shows that there's probably some fists being thrown by the attacker. This does not align with Rui Gued's story at all about him being in the bathroom and then all of a sudden seeing this anonymous man murdering Kircher. Another piece of evidence that didn't really make mainstream media was Filomena's room. There was a broken window and it was ransacked. The prosecution argued that the rock was actually thrown through the window from inside the villa as part of an attempt to make the murder appear to be the result of a robbery. 4 witnesses, including 2 officers of the state police, testified that the glass from the broken window was on top of the displaced items, indicating that the room had been ransacked and then the window was broken, while there are also valuables in plain sight that were not touched. Now, something I think is really powerful is Solicito has now started an app to remember loved ones that have been either killed or passed away. There's not much on the internet about his app called Memories, but it is said that he is requesting €500,000 or $790,000 as compensation for his wrongful imprisonment. Wow, what a case this is, and how many different things happened up until now in this high-profile case. Just as last year, in 2021, Rui Gued was actually released from prison after serving 13 years in prison, which is over 75% of his 16-year sentence. This case, from what I learned, is that it's not mainstream because of this attractive Knox and her nationality, but because of the international question of how justice should be carried out. With foreign people many times visiting foreign countries and being prosecuted, it is very difficult to understand the law process around the world, especially since the Italian courts reconvicted the two and then it was overturned again, puts into question how many other cases were not properly carried out and didn't have the media coverage or support like Knox's case did. The highest court in Italy of overturns dealt with this case, but not many cases can get to that level without the support it needs. Personally, if I was wrongfully imprisoned in Italy right now, I'd have a little bit of belief and hope for myself. If I had to guess who did it, I think it was Rui Gued, because he admitted he knew she got murdered. But then why would he write with blood on the wall? Why would he not report it? And then let Knox find the body and report it? It makes sense to me. I also would like to highlight how the crime scene investigators here did not do such a great job of securing proper evidence and keeping this crime scene safe. It was more a photography unit and not an evidence collection unit, so the crime scene ended up becoming contaminated, and the solid evidence to actually help solve who did this was hard to find and hard to secure. There was only one primary scene, so it didn't take much time and work to preserve the scene, but I think actions like this, murder and serious crimes, are less common in Italy, so maybe they didn't have the training that they needed. This also can be brought up as an international subject about how police departments and law enforcement agencies that have more training in this field could go possibly around the world and help more people learn. This was such a blow to the criminal justice situation and an international embarrassment for many people. I really hope you have enjoyed listening to this week's episode of Crimes with Connor, and make sure you guys submit who you think did it, so we can go through these polls on my Twitter at Crimes with Connor, and what evidence you guys would use in your cases for or against each person. If you guys have any cases you would like to see next week, please let me know through my email or my Twitter as always. Make sure you go check out Raid Shadow Legends because that is such an amazing game. One more time, just going to shout those guys out. I couldn't do this without them. I hope everyone here has an amazing March. I hope everyone's being safe. Watch behind your back. Make sure to buy your own copy of Gift of Fear, an amazing book. Be safe out there. Happy lawyering. Have a lovely weekend. And make sure you guys submit what you guys think about this case on Twitter. See you around.